The MAGA right wing of the Supreme Court is up to its old tricks again, allowing Donald Trump to swing the axe and fire anybody at will on any congressionally made agency or commission, this time the Federal Trade Commission. Just 2 weeks ago, we knew we were in trouble because John Roberts, who had the first bite at this apple, decided that he was going to do an administrative stay by himself of Rebecca Slaughter, the only Democratic member of the Federal Trade Commission, and do a stay to keep her off, to allow the firing to be valid while they got around to full briefing. Well, there's been full briefing on the issue of the stay, and now they've decided they've got the votes to not only keep Rebecca Slaughter off as the only Democrat of the Federal Trade Commission, but now they've got the votes to overturn a 90-year-old precedent called Humphrey's Executor, which is currently the precedent on the books that says that if Congress creates a commission or an agency, that the president can't upset the separation of powers and the balance of powers by firing that commission and agency if Congress wanted it to be stabilized with either for cause termination, because he fired her without cause, or stabilized by having staggered terms, longer terms, something to take it out of the political winds. But Donald Trump has been swinging the axe, and the MAGA Congress has been complicit in that and in his exploitation of the shadow docket. This short-circuited way of emergency relief is being used to rip precedent out of the books, to rip amendments and the fabric of our Constitution out of the Constitution. That's how Donald Trump got rid of the Democrats on the National Labor Relations Board, the Merit Services Protection Board, the Consumer Protections Board, and now the Federal Trade Commission. And what Justice Kagan said is that the emergency docket should never be used to declare and reverse our own precedent. You want to do that? You're raring to go on that? Then do that when the case is up on a full-blown appeal. But on an emergency docket with a one-paragraph decision, you should never disturb our precedent or to reshape the nation's separation of powers through the use of the shadow docket. I'm Michael Popok. You're here on Monday on Legal AF, and we've got the breaking news. Just because they're not in session doesn't mean the Supreme Court's not busy little beavers trying to ruin our constitutional republic and the separation of powers. Here's the entirety of the actual majority decision. I'm posting this on Legal AF Substack today, so you can read it for yourself. The Donald J. Trump versus Rebecca Kelly Slaughter. The application for stay presented to the Chief Justice and by him referred to the court is granted. Translation, Roberts did an administrative stay for a week. Now he's got the 5 votes he needs to put in a full-blown stay in place, subject to briefing and an appeal. The July 17th order of the United States District Court for the District of Columbia is stayed. That's what put Rebecca Slaughter back at her job, citing Humphrey's Executor, which is a case from 1935 on all fours, we call it. It's exactly identical to this case. Humphreys was on the Federal Trade Commission, just like Rebecca Slaughter. Humphreys was fired by a Democrat in that case because he was a Republican holdover in Franklin Delano Roosevelt, just like Trump is firing Slaughter. And there, the Supreme Court said, you cannot do that. That violates the separation of powers. You have to do it for cause or not at all. Now, I understand that the MAGA right wing wants to get rid of Humphrey's Executor. And what Kagan's saying in her dissent, which I'll read to you, is do it in due course. Why are you doing it through the emergency docket? Well, we know the answer to that. It's rhetorical. I'm reading you the complete majority decision, and this is it. That was it. It stayed. The parties are directed to brief and argue the following questions: whether the statutory removal protections for members of the Federal Trade Commission, that means the for cause rationale, violate the separation of powers, and if so, whether Humphrey's Executor from 1935 should be overruled. And then whether a federal court may prevent a person's removal from public office at all. This will be argued in December of 2025 during the argument session, and the stay shall terminate upon the sending down of the judgment. But they've already got the 5 votes to keep Rebecca Slaughter off, to give Donald Trump this power. But it's not just Donald Trump. Let me be fair for a minute. and be frank for a minute. This is now the precedent. If they rip down Humphrey's executor, the next president, a Democratic president, can do the exact same thing. This Supreme Court just ruined all of the congressional power that had been reposited in commissions and agencies to make our life better, to regulate in certain areas, to protect federal and other workers and union workers, to protect the consumer, to protect people in the business world against Ponzi schemes and other things. And the same thing would happen at the Securities and Exchange Commission and everything else. Regulators will be fired by Donald Trump and replaced with political hacks, just like he has done at the Federal Communications Commission with Brendan Carr. And that is what Kagan is pointing out and complaining about. Here's what she says on the bottom of page 2 of her dissent. Under existing law, what Congress said goes, as this court unanimously decided nearly a century ago in Humphrey's executor. We rejected a claim of the presidential prerogative identical to the one made here. Indeed, the suit emerged from a discharge at the very same agency, the Federal Trade Commission. Congress, we held, may restrict the president's power to remove members of the Federal Trade Commission as well as other agencies performing quasi-legislative or quasi-judicial functions without violating the Constitution. So the president cannot fire an FTC commissioner without any reason. To reach a different result requires reversing the rule, overturning the precedent of Humphreys. It entails overriding rather than accepting Congress's judgment. See, Congress always gets the short end of the stick with the Supreme Court. First of all, Congress, which is in the current control of MAGA, is not going to stand up for itself. Because if they would, they would go into court, intervene, and say, we want to intervene and talk about our rights under a separation of powers and balance of powers that's being disrupted by Donald Trump. But he's got a lapdog, not even in Congress. And so they're not going to do that. Here's what Kagan says about that. The majority of the Supreme Court may be raring to take that action of overturning that precedent. But until the deed is done, Humphreys controls and prevents the majority from giving the president the unlimited removal power Congress denied him. Our emergency docket should never be used, as it has been this year, to permit what our own precedent bars. In other words, you want to take down the precedent, then do it in the proper and regular way. Come correct, is what she's saying. Do it with full briefing, do it on oral argument, do it in October, November, December, whenever it's going to be. And then if you got the votes, then tear it down, but not through effectively a backdoor emergency way of issuing a stay. Our emergency docket, Justice Kagan complained, should never be used, as it has been this year, to permit what our own precedent bars. Still more, it should not be used, as it also has been, to transfer government authority from Congress to the president and reshape the separation of powers. But this is going to fall on deaf ears. This is the same MAGA majority that completely tipped over and destroyed the separation of powers in the co-equal branches of government by levitating the presidency over the other purportedly, but no longer, co-equal branches of government, the judiciary and the legislative branch, by giving the president, whoever occupies that office, immunity from criminal prosecution. And to say that everything a president does within his core function or stretch to the outer boundaries of his job responsibilities, none of that can be the subject of a criminal investigation, prosecution, indictment, or conviction. That destroyed the balance of power and the separation of powers right then and there. And we see the living, breathing embodiment of it with Donald Trump. So to say, well, I mean, does it shock you that having given Donald Trump and the Trump presidency the power of a Leviathan, lording over the other two branches, putting them on his lap like two lapdogs, that they would then also allow him to take command and control of every piece of congressional power out there and to violate it and to further retreat from a co-equal branch of government style? It all falls into place, does it not? So what's going to happen next? Okay, there's going to be briefing. We know where they're going. They telegraphed it to us. The question for appeal, the issue on appeal is, should Humphrey's executor, that case from 1935 that says that Congress can put limits on presidential power to fire at will from an agency or commission that they create, that's on life support. It's beyond life support. It's on last rites because they want it briefed. So, of course, the Republican MAGA are going to brief why Humphrey's executor is no longer good law, that the Federal Trade Commission has far exceeded anything that was envisioned in 1935, which is all untrue, that it now exercises so much executive power, not quasi-judicial, not quasi-legislative, also a lie, that it needs to be destroyed. It needs to be consumed by the president because it's an executive thing, you know? But the other flip side argument is Congress wouldn't have created the agency or the commission if they had known that they were just going to somebody was just going to take a blue pencil and write out the part about bipartisan, non-political governorship or commission or agency control. If I'm Congress, I'm like, I don't even want to do that. I don't want to do the agency. And woe be the next Congress that creates an agency and creates a commission expecting a president to respect its formation and its structure. They now, based on the Supreme Court ruling, if they were ever to get around to create a new agency or commission, they have to know going in that it's going to be completely packed with political hacks of whoever's sitting in the Oval Office. And if that's okay with them, great. Then so be it. Because the days of bipartisan regulation, bipartisan commissions and agencies like the Federal Trade Commission, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Consumer Protection Board, the National Labor Relations Board, the Special Counsel's Office, all done because the United States Supreme Court put them into the garbage disposal and did it in such an insulting and infuriating way, which is what Kagan picks up in her decision. I'll continue to follow it all. Hey, guess where you can read all about it? I sound like a paperboy from like the 1920s. Read all about it. It's up on Legal AF Substack. You'll be able to read. It won't take you long. I read to you the 3 pages, but it's up there for your review. Legal AF Substack. That's where you get your bona fides. That's where you get to be a card-carrying member of Legal AF. You're here on YouTube, building us strong, and no paywall, nothing. Come over to Legal AF Substack. Great new content there, including 2 lives a day that I do and other writing that is contributed by our contributors. And if you can become a paid member, I think it's $6, $7 a month, all the better to support Legal AF in these, what do we call them? Trying times. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.